So, you want to learn how to become a better animatronic Springtrap within Dead by Daylight. I'm here to give you 5 tips and tricks to try and become a better Springtrap. Not all of these tips will cover every single aspect of the killer, so if you have any extra tips, be sure to leave them in the comments section for everybody else to see. If you're unfamiliar with Springtrap in general, I'm going to do a quick little explanation now. Springtrap is the newest killer within Dead by Daylight that is a licensed killer with the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter. For anybody that's brand new to understanding Springtrap, I'll give a brief explanation of the power. Springtrap's power can be broken down to 2 different parts: the Fire Axe and the Security System. The Fire Axe is a ranged attack that he can throw at survivors. It is a lethal attack, which means it can damage survivors, but it's also got a very useful other secondary aspect that can give you extra information on where the survivors are. We'll touch a little bit more on this later on in the tips. Springtrap also has a security system consisting of 7 security doors that are spawned randomly throughout the map. These doors tend to spawn next to generators, so it's quite easy for you to keep track of. And both the survivors and Springtrap himself can access these doors at any point. Each security door has a camera attached to it. Interacting with the door gives the survivors access to a camera view, which allows survivors to cycle through each camera in the map. While there's a limited duration that survivors can interact with these doors, Springtrap can teleport freely to any door that they choose. Just to quickly go over the Adept perks for Springtrap. The first perk is Haywire. Exit gate switches with at least 80% progress regress at a rate of 100% of the gate opening speed. This perk will regress the exit gate opening progression back down to 80% progress. The second perk is Help Wanted. When you damage a generator, it becomes compromised, similar to how machine learning works. Only one generator can be compromised at any point, but when the compromised generator is completed, your successful basic attack cooldowns are 25% faster for 60 seconds. The third perk is Phantom Fear. When a survivor within your terror radius looks at you, they scream and you see their aura for 2 seconds. This perk does have a 60-second cooldown, but can be very helpful if you're struggling to find survivors. Now that we've covered the general basics of Springtrap, we're now going to touch upon all of the tips and tricks that I have for this video. Starting with the more basic tips and working our way towards slightly more complicated ones. The first tip is about reclaiming the axe. When you're holding the axe in your inventory ready to throw, you run at 4.4 meters per second, which is a 110% speed to the survivors. This is about as fast as a huntress or a spirit, which means that you're generally a little bit slower than most other killers, which can hinder you when you're chasing a survivor. However, if you do throw the axe away, it does mean that you increase your movement speed to a 115% speed or a 4.6 meters per second. If you know that you're going to try and track down a survivor just by running up to them, discarding your axe is actually more useful because it means that you can catch up to the survivors quicker. Generally speaking, you want to get rid of your axe more often than not because you can reclaim your axe after a cooldown at any point. When you do catch up to a survivor, you can instantly call back your axe and then begin to start using it on that survivor. Tip number 2, which is more basic but something I didn't realize until I did some research. The fire axe comes out slightly from the right of your screen, which makes it miss if you're aiming at the center of your screen when the survivor's too close. So be aware of this when you're throwing at survivors that are closer range, as you might need to adjust your aim a little bit in order to compensate. The fire axe's hitbox is also quite thin, which means you can thread the needle, so to speak, and try and throw it through certain objects that have a little bit of a gap in, which can give you a little bit of an edge within a chase. Tip number 3. You can actually break the cameras on top of the security doors by hitting the door with your axe. When the survivors are about to reveal you, you'll get a glitched audio effect. Whenever you hear this audio, make sure you break the camera at the nearest security door so that you avoid being revealed. From the survivor's perspective, if they do successfully reveal you, everybody on the map can see your aura in a whitish outline glow. To add to this, if you leave the axe within the door, it also stops the survivors being able to travel through that door, which can be quite useful if you're trying to isolate one part of a map. For example, if there's a door that's elevated within a building, keeping the axe embedded within that door will stop survivors being able to teleport over to that door if there's a generator nearby, which can be really useful for map pressure. Tip number 4. Whenever you enter a security door, you can also press the cancel button and come back out of the same door. If you're near a progress generator and you enter the door nearby, you can actually make the survivors think that you've left the area and bait them into giving you a free hit if you come back out of that door. Be aware though, there is a way that survivors can tell, very subtly, the UI on the door that shows the linked door numbers actually flashes if you're still waiting within that door. If you're newer to the game and other survivors are at a lower level, they may not be aware of this tip, but be aware that it won't work on everybody. I also recently found out that you can see if a survivor is coming through that door by the same UI flashing, which kind of defeats the purpose because you will inevitably see them come out of the door anyway, but I thought it was useful to share that anyway. Tip number 5 that I have is that the arc-type trajectory of Springtrap's axe actually lets him pull off some really cool shots on smaller loops. Whenever a survivor is looping you on one of these loops, you can throw the axe quite high up and land it on the survivor over the other side of the object. Orbitals and skilled axe throws can be learned this way, so be sure to give it a try every so often when you're being looped around an outdoor pallet or a tile, and try to get used to the arc of the axe and how far you need to aim up with your mouse to throw it just beyond the object without throwing it too far ahead or too close for it to land on the object itself. While we're on the subject of the axe, as I previously mentioned about the hitbox of the axe being quite thin, this allows you to be able to throw some of the axes inside very tight spots that could be in or out of a building, and it can really catch survivors off guard. Instead of treating your axe the same way a huntress hatchet would be, try and think of it in the same way as how a deathslinger harpoon would fit through certain gaps. This doesn't work for everything, of course, but I think it would open your mind to being able to try shots that you otherwise wouldn't expect to hit. I'll try and provide a few examples of these shots inside this video. Now that I've given you some tips, I'd like to provide a couple of little ideas for perks that you could run that might help elevate your game on Springtrap. The first perk that springs to mind is Friends Till the End. Whenever you hook a survivor that's not the obsession within the match becomes exposed for 20 seconds. It also reveals their aura for 10 seconds. This can give you enough time to walk over to a nearby security door and travel towards the next survivor that you see. If you're lucky, you could even get the exposed hit, but at the very least, it will give you some aura reading to be able to allow you to snowball your game consistently and allow you to get consistent chases. While most perks with aura reading abilities would come in handy, another perk that I have in mind that I think would come in very handy is Dead Man's Switch. As soon as you hook a survivor, using Dead Man's Switch, the first survivor that stops repairing a generator causes the entity to block it for 50 seconds. And because the generator is highlighted with a white aura, it means that you can quickly identify where that generator is so that you can travel towards that generator and try and find the survivor in the process. Another incredible perk that should be utilized alongside other aura reading perks is Lethal Pursuer. This allows you to see all of the auras of every survivor in the map at the beginning of the trial. This will allow you to pinpoint somebody straight away and teleport straight over to them using the security doors. The beauty of Springtrap is that he doesn't have a cooldown when you begin the trial with his power, so you can instantly use a security door and traverse the other side of the map the moment you spawn in. This is why perks like Lethal Pursuer are so useful against survivors. Although a lot of other creators would recommend you running undetectable perks alongside his build, I think that Springtrap provides enough undetectable value that means you can avoid using perks like Tinkerer as a result of the fact that you won't get as much value if it's stacked on top of an existing power. Just to touch on Springtrap's add-ons, as of the time of recording, there was actually a bug fix that came into Dead by Daylight, which has actually changed some of Springtrap's add-ons. Just to touch on a couple of useful add-ons, one of the very useful add-ons that I would recommend is the uncommon add-on Security Guard's Badge. When exiting a security door after a teleport, gain the undetectable status effect for 25% longer. This was 50% longer, but as of today, they have actually reduced this by half. I still think this would give you extra value though, and I would still recommend you using it. Another really useful add-on that has recently had a nerf is called Streamers. This is another uncommon add-on, and it increases the speed at which you travel through security doors by 15%. Again, this was nerfed from 20%, but I still think it's got just enough value for you to get some good value out of it anyway, and still recommend you using it during your matches. Other add-ons that I would recommend include the common add-on Restaurant Menu, which decreases the minimum time required to retrieve your axe if it's embedded in the environment by 20%. or if you miss somebody within an existing chase. The last add-on I would recommend is the Visceral Rarity add-on, Fazcoin. When you throw the axe, it gains a terror radius of 24 meters until it's reclaimed, but you also gain the undetectable status effect for 10 seconds. This could be useful if you're not going to travel through a security door and you still want to sneak up on a survivor, because you can discard your axe and then travel towards them with the guaranteed 10 seconds of undetectable. But as far as Springtrap's concerned, I think that's all I have to share. So to summarize, Springtrap has a power similar to both Huntress and Demogorgon, in which he has traversal for map pressure, alongside the ranged axe attack that's similar to Huntress's hatchets. I hope you guys learned something new from this video. And of course, I haven't covered absolutely everything there is to know with Springtrap, so if there's anything that you think I've missed out, or any other hidden tips and tricks that you guys have discovered, be sure to leave them in the comments section for other people to see. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this kind of content, and if you want me to do more of it in the future. I also live stream over on my Twitch channel where I'm happy to answer any questions, no matter how basic you think it is. So be sure to go and drop a follow over there as well. I'll leave the link in the description. Be sure to check out another video on screen if you're interested. But other than that, have a wonderful rest of your day.